YouTube, welcome to my channel. I'm Bella, and today I am reviewing season 3 of HisDarkMaterials, episode 7, which is the penultimate episode, and it is called The Cloud Mountain. Oh boy, trauma and trigger warning on this one. The CGI was great, the performances were awesome. I wept twice. I've watched this episode and it's just so traumatic. I'm loving the changes that they have made during the series, such as Mrs. Cool to teach inspectors to fly, and also she does that in the books, but she does it slightly differently in the TV show. And I'm loving the fact of how they've demonstrated her control over them. It's very different in the books to the TV show. This review is not going to be as detailed as it could be because they've left certain parts out. Obviously the Botanic Garden, which is cough the traumatic next episode, I am going to have to go into detail. Sorry about that. There's no escaping religion, philosophy and atheism in the last episode. There just isn't. In this episode we are going to talk about Metatron. Metatron is an archangel that does exist. If you Google him, he will come up on Wikipedia. He is associated with the New Age movement and the occult. He's also associated with Christianity, Judaism and Islam. Metatron is an archangel, also known as Enoch. Enoch being the son of Jared, who was a descendant of Adam. Just so you know, through Seth's line, obviously not Abel because Cain slew Abel. Cain also had a son called Enoch as well, but this is not that Enoch. It is the descendant of Adam. Enoch that we are dealing with here, the one that was so righteous and so good that got taken up in a city to God, which is what has happened in this universe. But unfortunately Enoch, after becoming an archangel, Metatron, turned on the creator and put him in a cube. Yep, he put the creator in a cube and then governed. For whatever reason, he is now regent, but he is not the authority. Just so you know. So the trauma of this episode, we all know what Marissa and Lord Asriel do in this episode. I'm not actually going to talk about what they do, but they face eternal oblivion for it. I'm loving the fact that they changed the fact that Lyra did not know what happened to them. In the TV show she does, because you have the scene obviously with the golden monkey, who may or may not be called Ozymandias. I know why people don't like it. I appreciate that Ozymandias was written by Percy Bysshe Shelley, who was from Cambridge, and Lyra is an Oxford girl, so there is that going on. But also Ozymandias is a poem about a great ruler who everything that they have built is now turned to dust, which is interesting. I know that Philip Pullman doesn't like it. He would actually prefer... There is a whole load of people that want the golden monkey to be called Malice, and I'm like, no way, that's too direct. Ozymandias is perfect, because parts of Marissa's soul, yes, that's the best part of her, but actually it reflects her, because all her work does eventually turn to dust, space dust. So, but she never, and Lyra, her greatest achievement, will also turn to dust. So overall I'm quite happy with the monkey being called Ozymandias. That's my thing, I like it. I'm loving the fact that you actually see how loyal Lord Asriel is, both to his snow leopard soul and to Marissa, all the way through this. Loving the fact that Marissa got called a moral quagmire because she is a moral quagmire. There's a whole beautiful speech in the book about it, but they just shorten it to a sentence, which was a tad annoying, but we've only got like an hour to get through all of this, so I fully appreciate that. And calling her a moral quagmire does sum it all up, to be fair. The CGI was lovely. The moment of the touching of the hands was very God and Adam-like. I loved that. There are a lot of those kind of symbolic moments all the way through HisDarkMaterials that link to something religious, or link to something philosophical, or link to some kind of religious iconography. There's no way of getting round it. We are dealing with an atheist fairy tale that spends quite a lot of time faffing about in Genesis, in the Garden of Eden, but this is dealing with how we deal with the authority, or what is the authority. It's not God, because God doesn't actually turn up in this. Weirdly enough, the creator, who we're not actually sure is that God, is that Jesus, it's never stated, and in fact Jesus doesn't even come into his dark materials at all. The creator, who is only known as the authority, it's never called God, by the way, I'm just pointing that out, is in a cube. So after the event that happens between Marissa, Metatron and Lord Asriel, which I'm going to leave because there's oodles of it, you can Google it, you can traumatise yourself by looking that one up. The cube falls because the creator's been imprisoned in this cube by Metatron, who is now falling in an abyss with some other people. And Will opens it, and suddenly the dust goes, and we see a very, very wrinkled person. We don't even see their face, and then they go up and rejoin with the universe. So have they died, or are they going to become something else? We don't know. The CGI is brilliant. The performances are great. It is brilliant to see it visualised. It is truly traumatic. I wept at some of it in this episode. It really is. You really do feel the sacrifice. And having that scene between the monkey and Lyra, it was just almost touching, but yet not touching. Yet she knows. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Loving the witches. Loving the fact that they've actually taken inspiration from the Matrix and the squiddies going over and various things with the attention craft. Loved it. Loved it, loved it. Matrix vibes. It has got some really, really good moments. Loving Marissa's control of the Spectre, so that was a great moment of how she suppressed herself, because she has suppressed herself. It is hugely implied in the books that she experienced some neglect and some child abuse as a child, did Marissa, from her mother, who sent that lovely case with all the pretty dresses in. Very helpful of her. I'm assuming it's helpful. Or maybe she was one of these cruel to be kind people, which is, I'm getting the gist. Anyway, so yes, interesting. Oh, Marissa, she's one of the best female written villains / anti-heroes / saviours ever written, to be absolutely honest, is poor old Marissa. And it's interesting, the interpretation of Eve and the Fall, but I'm saving that for the next one. Sorry, it's going to have to get religious in that one. There's no way around it. And it was not an almond sweet, it was definitely a marzipan one, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm supposed to be dealing with the Cloud Mountain. So, Metatron has gone, the creator has gone, that has all crumbled. And now, because of what they have done with allowing the souls from the land of the dead to rejoin with the universe, it means that that life can continue. We've still got the problem of dust being leaking down into the abyss. We are going to solve that. Don't worry, that happens in Botanic Gardens with the lovely blue elephants on a coconut roller skate with the pear soap that doubles for the amber spyglass. Love that. We are going to get there. This episode, I can't even give it 5 out of 5. It is beyond 5. It's so beautifully performed by everybody in it that it's just stunning. There's only 2 things. One, you can tell it's a children's novel because Will and Lyra don't actually do any fighting, and it all seems to be over very, very quickly. The stakes are high, but we never really feel the impact because they're sort of being guided through this, which is very nice. I would have liked to have a little bit more information on those grey hobgoblin harpy things without wings. I wanted to know a bit more. I suppose we can always, Google them or look it up in the book, because there's 3 books for his Dark Materials trilogy. You could read them rather than just watch the TV show, which has cut some bits out, and we will get to that in the Botanic Gardens. But we're dealing with this episode 7, and it's an important episode, so that was a bit annoying. Also, I find that Lyra and Will are very detached, and I know there's a reason for it, but they're very detached from what's going on. And I fully get why Lyra is detached from cough cough, the douchey parents that decide to co-parent and then decide to do a sacrifice. We understand that, but actually it makes, for a viewer, a poor experience. Yes, we have that beautiful scene with the monkey. That was just so beautifully done because we had to have that. Because, unfortunately, because her parents, for whatever reason, we assume protective, don't tell her stuff because they want to protect her. That is the gist that I'm getting at. It means that she's left to herself to figure it out, which is very nice of them because Lyra's a smart kid and she'll put it all together as she always does. This episode, you can't really rate it because it's so beautifully done. The CGI is perfect, the resolution is perfect. You feel that after this episode, because we had that beautiful cliffhanger leading to this episode, and you feel that you've achieved. What happens in the Botanic Garden episode feels very, in comparison to this, a bit of a letdown, but we'll get there. We will get there. This episode is beautiful because it resolves the whole Lord Asriel, Marissa Coulter thing beautifully. We all know its resolution. We know that even though they were apart, they loved each other for the majority of their lives, and it was just circumstances that have prevented them, or their own tinkering, or the fact that they're so obsessed with whatever it is they're researching. I don't know, cutting souls out of children seems to be a big thing for them. And it's interesting that before that you had that scene where Lord Asriel is tinkering away and Marissa's like trying to tell me, just because you do not believe in these prophecies, the Magisterium does, and they're going to kill your daughter. Can we please have some action, dear? And remember who you're talking to, or you're just going to continue tinkering, which is a very, very interesting thing. And you really do see how he dismisses everything that isn't rational or logical, and it's like, no, I've got to do this, and it's like, no, just because you don't believe this does not mean that other people aren't going to act on these things and make it so. And that's interesting, because we all know what happens to atheists. Some atheists get depression. There have been studies on that. It's interesting what that idea, because yes, a person may believe that there is no God, but because there are institutions, one assumes, where people do believe in God, or they're just very good fakers, who knows, that things will happen around this prophecy whether you believe it or not, and it's therefore you've got to engage with it on some level just to exist. And I find that's very interesting, because Asriel as a man doesn't seem to have that engagement with it, because his rationality, his facts, he's never had to sort of openly acknowledge that actually what they're doing might be true. So when he does have that scene, it is really good for him to do that, because it sets him up to confront his darkness, which he never really has. And even when he is confronting his darkness, he's still a pretty arrogant, cocky guy about it, because it's like, yeah, I know I'm arrogant, this is what I've done, and I've got rational reasons to back it up. You can't bully me into morality. And it's like, it's not about morality, it's about your ability to empathise with other people's suffering. And I think that that's interesting. We've moved away. There's morality, right and wrong, and then there's other human beings' ability to empathise and respect another being just because it's alive. And Lord Asriel doesn't really do that either. He loves Marissa, but he only loves her when she conforms to what he wants her to be. And that's very interesting in itself, because for him, science and rationality are king. He does not empathise with other beings suffering that we know of. He wants people to have true intellectual freedom and to be able to choose and live full lives, but that isn't engaging with them on some kind of emotional level either. So that's interesting. But yes, 5 out of 5, beyond 5 out of 5 for this episode. The Clouded Mountain is really well done. It is the crown and the jewel of HisDarkMaterials Season 3, it really is. I've spoken enough. Please like, comment and subscribe, and don't forget to click the notification bell for my latest video.